Hello, everybody. I'm here to talk to y'all about Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. I'm putting in the chat a place where you can join into the Nearpod. I also put a link if you are a teacher and you would like to use this presentation for your own. It's a place where you can copy in the Nearpod as well. Alrighty, let's get to it. Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium is a theorem that was put together to see a population's allele and genotype frequencies and remain constant, how they can remain constant. Now, in this theorem, they're saying that populations, allele, and genotypic frequencies will remain constant unless there's some type of evolutionary forces acting on them. Recall when we talked about natural selection, where the environment is pressuring different traits to be better or to worse, mutations that are happening to cause different traits, migration like genetic drift, founder effect and bottlenecking, things moving from one population to the next, so therefore relocating genetics. Recall how a small population, and with a small population, how an allele can easily be removed from a population, and selective mating. Call back to when we talked about the birds. We talked about how one bird might favor another bird based off of different traits. So Hardy and Weinberg said that if all of these assumptions were followed, then there would be no more evolution. So if we stopped natural selection, no more environmental pressures, no more mutation, no more moving from one population to the next, always keeping a big population and random mating, no more picking the pretty birds or the birds with the fancy dances, just everyone's mating with randomly. If that, then we'd be at equilibrium. This means that there would be no more evolution. Now, there is an equation, we can calculate this, and so we can actually see if a population is evolving based off the genotypic or allele frequencies that we can see in the population. And so we can follow along and we can calculate how many homozygous dominant p squared, how many heterozygous 2p squared, or how many homozygous recessive q squared there are in a population. If the population frequencies equal, genotypic frequencies add up to 1, the population is not evolving. And remember, in order to be not evolving, all 5 of the assumptions have to be held true. You can also do a little bit deeper calculation in just the alleles, so dominant allele versus recessive allele, dominant P versus recessive Q. And again, if they equal 1, it is not evolving. And so this is how we can see if a population is at equilibrium or if it is evolving. Notice here that when we calculate these genotypic frequencies, we will come up with a population that has not evolved from one generation to the next. Now recall that evolution happens in more than just one generation at a time, so you'd have to do a lot of calculations. I have attached a video. I'm not going to take a moment to play it here, but it's just a little amoeba sister video that you can watch if you need a little bit more help on how to calculate and practicing like we did in class and calculating to find the genotypic ratios, specifically to like homozygous dominant or homozygous recessive, or if you need a little bit help on the allele frequencies. But I wanted you to take a moment and put to the test our Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. Back in the 1950s, Peter Burrow did do a experiment where he was trying to violate the Hardy-Weinberg's theorem's assumptions. So you are going to read through chapter 6.4 in our Evolutionary Biology textbook and then ask yourself what assumptions were violated. So if you would, just go ahead and put this video on pause, go to 6.4 and read, and go ahead and think about what of the assumptions were violated, if any. Go ahead and pause now. Alrighty, and coming back, you have just read our section on 6.4, and you're thinking about which one of the Hardy-Weinberg assumptions were violated, if any. If more than one were violated, please make sure that you select all that apply. Now, was it natural selection or no natural selection? Mutations or no mutations? Migration, were they moving from one to the next, or did he keep them contained? Was it a small population, a large population? Where's their selective mating, or did he force them to have the random mating? So these are things we're looking at. Go ahead and click in your response. Now, if you read 6.4 and you thought, oh, size does matter, you are on the right track. If we look back at the mating with the flies, due to the small population, this is why we saw such a dramatic change. So does population size matter? Yes, size does matter. If you go to your evolutionary biology textbook and you look at figure 6.6, you can see that when we had a population size of 20, look how many dramatic changes there are in the population. But if we move it up to 200 population size, the changes slow down dramatically. But at a population of 2,000, there's practically no change at all. So this shows that population size does matter. And so if you're trying to see equilibrium, we need to look at the population size. All right, let's go and dive a little bit deeper into our gizmos, our Hardy-Weinberg with our gizmos. Every Gwinnett County teacher and student has access to Gizmos Virtual Labs. So go ahead and click Launch on your gizmos, and let's go to the Hardy-Weinberg Equilibrium Gizmo. I'm also going to attach a Google document that will allow you to follow along on the gizmo. So if you click out of our chat, you'll see our Google document that I would like you to follow along with the chat. So go ahead and click into that as well. The whole point of this gizmo is for you to understand Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium better, of course. And so you're going to observe these allele frequencies and you're going to see how they are remaining the same. What's happening? Which one of the Hardy-Weinberg assumptions are we following? Are we following all of them? You'll be able to see how random mating does affect the population, be able to calculate heterozygous versus homozygous ratios, and most importantly, be able to fully manipulate the Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium equation to be able to evaluate the different frequencies within the population. So again, we are going to go ahead and click on our gizmos. Clicking into your gizmos is what we're going to be at. So when you get there, you're launching and you're going to see something like this. And so we are going to continue to breed our parrots. Every single time they are breeding randomly, and then they are going to have sexual reproduction between the two offspring. And so we can then record their offspring in our data chart. And you will continue from generation to the next, where we are recording our data in a table. We'll record it in a graph for alleles as well as genotypes. And so this is all going to be along with following in your Google document. So what I would like you to do now is pause and go to your Google document, go to your Hardy-Weinberg gizmo, and follow along in the instructions to make sure you're following and gathering all the necessary data. Recall that the whole purpose of this document is for you to figure out how is the Hardy-Weinberg principle really changing? How does it affect this population of parrots? Is it affecting the population of parrots? Are we holding to the assumptions? Recall the assumptions. And then I want you to describe, is the population evolving? And so this is what we're going to think about. Once you've filled out this document and you're ready to come back after completing your gizmo, remember, make sure you have completed the gizmo and recorded all your data. We're going to come back to the Nearpod. So when you're ready, come back to the Nearpod. Go ahead and pause, take care of your Google document, and then come back when you're ready. Quick note, if you are a teacher and you're following along with this presentation, the Hardy-Weinberg Equilibrium Gizmo is a great way to make sure your students are able to manipulate the Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium equations. This is a simulated environment that helps them understand random mating and a population with no evolutionary pressures, so they can see how it could maintain equilibrium. This also gives them an opportunity to apply evolutionary factors like natural selection, genetic drift, mutations, and non-random mating to the population to see if they can see any changes in their data. As they're coming back from the Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium gizmo, we're going to fill in this conclusion. Now recall, this whole purpose of going over is to make sure that you understand how the theorem of Hardy-Weinberg can prove a population is either evolving or not evolving. So making sure you know how to manipulate the equation. Go ahead and answer the questions from the gizmo about our alleles and how you determined the selection process and how they are being affected, especially when there was poaching of the parrots. Take time to fill in and be able to see all your peers' responses here in our Nearpod. Alrighty, guys, I hope that because of that gizmo and our time with the experiment with the fruit flies, that you can see evolution is everywhere. Populations are always evolving, and it's very hard to have a population that will hold to all Hardy-Weinberg's assumptions. So populations are always evolving. So I would like you to keep exploring and discover more into the wonderful world of evolution. Thanks for joining me here with our evolution and Hardy-Weinberg.